An opening day win for the Phillies as they head down to Washington and take care of business in Game 1, 7-3. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Once again, Tyler Zula here as we are presented to you by, we are brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. More on them throughout the show today, but I do want to get into yesterday's victory in Washington over the Washington Nationals 7-3. There was some good, there was some bad, there was some ugly, and we'll break it all down. But in the grand scheme of things, it is 0.6%, of a season. 1 of 162, a long way to go. But there was some good, and I think there was more good than there was bad. And I know a lot of people are going to immediately look to the fact that the MacKenzie Gore diced them up for 6 innings, and the fact that they swung through a lot of pitches and struck out 13 times in the first 6 innings and struck out 19 times in total. So we'll get to all of that. Also, midway through the show at about 1:30, we're going to be joined by Andrew Golden, who covers the Washington Nationals for the Washington Post. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing each and every Friday is speaking with a media member or a credentialed beat writer from the team in which the Phillies are going to play for the weekend series ahead. Now, this weekend's a little bit different with opening day, but with the day off today, we were able to chat with Andrew, so we'll talk to him at 1:30 as well. So as I said, there's good, there's bad, there's ugly. Let's start with the good, because after all, the Phillies did win the game yesterday, and they are 1-0, and it could have been an 0-1 start, which would have been even more disastrous than the discourse was on social media and things like that about the fact that they did strike out 19 times. But let's start with the good. And when I think about yesterday, the good to me jumps out as Zack Wheeler, as it does more times than not when Zack Wheeler starts a game for the Phillies. 6 innings pitched yesterday, 97 pitches. He struck out 80, gave up just 2 hits, including 4 base runners. So 2 hits, 2 walks, and just the 1 earned run, the Keibert Ruiz home run. And the one thing that I noticed with Zack Wheeler, and I don't know why I noticed it yesterday, maybe because I was in attendance. And by the way, had an excellent time with our friends over at Philly Sports Trips. And you can catch our tailgate with Philly Sports Trips and Caps Catering on Monday or Tuesday, depending on when the home opener is going to be. But we'll talk more about that later as well. Maybe it was because I was in attendance and I had a kind of a clear view. I was out in the right center field area of Nationals Park, and I kind of had a clear view in to see what a hitter was looking at. Now, I was a view from 400 feet away, but there was a clear view nonetheless to see kind of what the hitters were looking at when they see Zack Wheeler. But for some reason, I turned to the guy next to me at the game yesterday, and we were talking about Wheeler's dominance, and not just dominance in the fact that statistically he was awesome, but it's dominance in the fact of its poise, its demeanor, it's controlling the tempo, it's dictating pace. And we both looked at each other and went, Zack Wheeler has become so Doc-esque, has become so Roy Halladay-like in those factors. They don't pitch the same way. Wheeler has higher velocity, obviously, on his fastball. Both guys threw a ton of pitches. Wheeler throws 6. Doc threw, anywhere from 4 to 6 on a given day. But the way that I look at Zack Wheeler at this point is kind of the way that I viewed Roy Halladay when he would take the mound on any given night, or on any given day for that matter, where it was just a calmness. In the calamity of 162 games, every 5th day, Zack Wheeler takes the ball, and I feel like the Phillies are going to win the game. And even when Zack Wheeler doesn't have his best stuff, Zack Wheeler is such a pro, and he's so heady, he's so cerebral, that he knows how to escape jams when the few jams arise. He knows how to pitch, and he knows how to pitch in any given spot. And it's why, listen, you need good stuff to pitch in Major League Baseball. There's obviously no question about that. But to be an elite level pitcher, you have to pair that stuff with a mental fortitude to be able to go out and pitch. And Zack Wheeler does it on every 5th day. And to me, it never feels like Zack Wheeler is trailing in an at-bat. And I don't necessarily mean trailing in the count, right? He's had counts where he's 1-0, 2-1, 3-1, whatever the case may be. I don't necessarily mean in the situation. But when I say it doesn't feel like he's trailing, it feels like he is in control of the at-bat even when he's behind in the count. He kind of gives you the dictation of the at-bat. And he kind of says, here's how I'm going to work you. I'm going to work you up in the zone. I'm going to take you away with the slider or the sweeper, assuming it's a left-handed hitter. And I'm going to run the splitter down. I'm going to take the fastball up. I'm going to dictate the tempo. I'm going to dictate the pace. And I'm going to change your eye level. And I'm going to change your tendencies, and I'm going to change your cadence. So to me, the beauty of watching Zack Wheeler pitch doesn't necessarily just come from the fact that he's got great stuff, but it comes from the fact that he just dominates in a way that I haven't seen in a Phillies uniform really since Roy Halladay's done it. And when I've thought about the comp to Roy Halladay yesterday, that was like a light bulb moment, even though we know how good Zack Wheeler's been. It just felt to me like there's complete control. It's just, and Markel Futz puts out a good point. The bot loves other bots. It kind of is bot-like, right? It's just, because we've talked about it, right? The delivery is repeatable. The mechanics are repeatable. There's not a lot of unfluid motion. It's all very calm. It's all very succinct. It's all very fluid. And there's not a lot of wasted effort with Zack Wheeler, and it is almost robot-like. And it feels like it's getting to a point where the comp to Doc is real. So yesterday, I thought the only bad pitch or the only bad at bat that Roy Halladay, that Zack Wheeler had in yesterday's game was the Keibert Ruiz home run. And quite frankly, that's kind of a tip of a cap moment to Keibert Ruiz. He saw 10 pitches. He battled off a bunch of pitches in a row, fouling off pitch after pitch after pitch. And the pitch that Zack Wheeler threw him that he hit out of the park wasn't a bad pitch. It was 7 consecutive foul balls that ran a deep count. And honestly, I thought it was a good pitch. It was in on the hands. I think Wheeler maybe wanted to get it a little bit more in on the hands, and I know it was deep into the count. And so maybe he wanted to get that a little bit more in on the hands than what he got, but it was a good pitch on the inner half. And Keibert Ruiz did a nice job of opening up, turning on it, extending the hands, and getting the bat head through the zone quickly and getting the barrel to the baseball as quickly as he did. And he took it out of the park. I mean, it really wasn't a bad pitch. And so that's one of those moments where you tip the cap to Keibert Ruiz and say, hey, well done. Excellent at bat. You battled. You kind of swung the momentum back into your favor by spoiling some good pitches from Zack Wheeler. And at the end of the at-bat, it ended up just being a well-done moment to Keibert Ruiz. But that was really the only blunder that Wheeler had. He only gave up one other hit, and he walked 2 hitters later in the game. But he gave you 6 excellent innings with 8 strikeouts. He got his fastball up to 97.9, and he sat 96 on average most of the day. He also mixed all 6 of his pitches effectively. Every one of his pitches that he has in his arsenal, he threw at least 10% yesterday or more. And I know he threw the cutter almost exclusively to lefties, but he ran it in on lefties' hands quite a bit. The one pitch that I thought was excellent from the cutter from Zack Wheeler was the one that he threw to C.J. Abrams to strike him out early in the game. It was down a little bit. I think it was a cutter that he wanted to get in on the fist a little bit more and elevated, but it was such a good pitch that it had so much run to it that C.J. Abrams ended up almost falling to a back knee and swinging over top of it, and he really wasn't competitive in the at-bat. He was excellent yesterday. He was only barreled once, and he generated 12 swings and misses. I think that's the kind of start that you get from Zack Wheeler more times than not. But when your team is struggling offensively the way that the Phillies did through the first 6 innings, Zack Wheeler kept you in the game. He exits the game, on the losing end, or as the guy that would be saddled with the loss if they lose that game 1-0. Phillies tie the game. He gets off the hook. He gets a no decision in this one, and he was excellent in the game. And you know what? In fact, before I say that, let me double check that, because did they score 2? Oh, excuse me. They scored 2 in the 7th. So Zack Wheeler ends up getting the victory in this game. My apologies, because he was the pitcher of record when they scored 2 in the top of the 7th. The moment that, oh no, I apologize. Never mind. Scratch that. That's on me. Jordan Romano blew the game. So Jose Alvarado gets credit with the win. That's my fault. But a quality start nonetheless for Zack Wheeler. But let's move on to some of the other things that I thought were excellent in yesterday's game because it wasn't just Zack Wheeler. Now, of course, the offense did struggle from the first to the sixth inning. MacKenzie Gore was awesome. We're going to talk about him in the second segment of the Block B segment of this show. So a tip at the cap to him, but the offense did struggle. And yes, thank you, John. I apologize. He did not get the win. Alvarado got the win on that one. I mind slipped that Romano got the blown save in that one. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber get things started with the solo home runs in the seventh. And, that kind of sparked the offense a little bit because as soon as they got to the bullpen, it felt like a sigh of relief to me. It felt like it was, okay, take a deep breath. You've got through the MacKenzie Gore start, which was excellent. You've battled the shadows. The shadows had kind of made their way out at that point. And you were able to take advantage right away with the two solo home runs. And then Alec Bohm drives in two in extras. JT Realmuto drives in the insurance runs later in the inning. And they got after a bullpen that, quite frankly, I don't think is going to be very good this year. I think the Nationals bullpen is definitely suspect. In fact, I think it might be the worst of their three units. Because I'm pretty high on the Nationals offense this year, at least the top, 4 or 5 guys. I think CJ Abrams is a spark plug. I think that I'm a huge James Wood fan. I think he's going to put up monster power numbers this year. And they've got a bunch of dudes who are decent offensively as they, come along in this rebuild. But I think the bullpen for the Nationals is one of the problem spots for them as an organization, and the Phillies did a good job of getting after them, and they did what they were supposed to do. They get an earned run off Sims. They get 2 runs off Ferrer, excuse me. I'm going to mess that one up 3 or 4 times today, and 3 earned runs, 4 in total, off Colin Pache. The Nats bullpen yesterday over 4 innings pitched had a 13.5 ERA. They went after a bad bullpen and attacked it when they needed to. Speaking of at-bats, we have 2 more things that I thought were, or 2 more players that I thought were excellent yesterday. I thought Max Kepler was really good. I thought his at-bats were really strong all night long. He saw 29 pitches. It's the most pitches by any Phillies hitter yesterday. In fact, he had an at-bat in extra innings in which he saw 10 pitches that forced a walk. He didn't end up scoring in that one, but I thought the plate discipline later in the game specifically was really solid from Max Kepler. He reached base 3 times, including 2 of the Phillies' 6 walks. I just thought that he was one of the few guys that was seeing the baseball well, even early in the game. Now, everybody was striking out early in the game, but I thought Kepler saw the ball particularly well yesterday, so I had to shout him out. And then the last guy that I thought was good was Jose Alvarado. He threw the 6 fastest pitches in the entire game. The average fastball that he threw was 99.9. He topped out at 101.3. He retired the side in order. He got 2 strikeouts and a weak ground out in an inning that they needed him to come up clutch. He also only threw 6 pitches inside the zone. And it's something that we talked about earlier this week about Alvarado kind of being a key to success for this bullpen. When you lose Hoffman and you lose Estevez, it was kind of going to be paramount for him to have a bounce-back year. And the first start and what you saw from spring training have been encouraging because the velocity's up, the command is better. I think the confidence is certainly there as well, at least early in the spring and in the first appearance that he made yesterday. It's part of the get ahead, stay ahead approach that allows Jose Alvarado to attack hitters on both sides of the plate. You saw a lefty and a righty strike out against Jose Alvarado. The lefty was Nate Lowe, and Nate Lowe went flailing after 101 on the outer black, and he had no chance at it. He was late, and it was a bad swing, and Alvarado was able to set him up with that pitch by going inside early in the at-bat and using the velocity to his advantage. And then he sits 101 on the outer black and paints it. You're not touching it. So it was a really good, pitch sequencing from Jose Alvarado in that at-bat. And then later in the at-bat, Paul DeJong takes strike 3 from the right side, and he paints another fastball, 98-99, on the inner half. And it was one of those kind of, remember the patented Pat Burrell where the bat would come up over the head and he would try to do the shimmy, but it was really strike 3. Well, it was one of those pitches for Jose Alvarado, and I thought he was excellent yesterday. And again, I said he only threw 6 pitches inside the zone. He can do that when he's effective and getting ahead in the count because then the cutter off the back foot to the righties comes in play. The cutter on the hands to the lefties that runs back towards the strike zone is in play. The cutter out and away to the lefties comes in play. And he did throw a curveball yesterday, which I didn't expect, but he did use the curveball once in yesterday's game as well. So I think that Jose Alvarado is poised for a bounce back year, and it's so important for him to get ahead and stay ahead. And he did it in yesterday's game. So shout out to Jose Alvarado, shout out to Max Kepler, and shout out to Zack Wheeler. They are three of the stars of the game for me in terms of the things that I saw, not just statistically speaking, but the things that I saw. I wanted to give those three guys their flowers for yesterday's game. All right, before we get to the bad, because there was bad yesterday, and of course we have to talk about it, and we'll talk to Andrew Golden from the Washington Post coming up at 1:30. Let's pause for just a moment and tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. And listen, if you're like me, you are constantly worried about your finances because between student loans and trying to save for a home, paying for my child's childcare coming up in just a little bit as well, I'm always thinking about how can I get ahead and how can I stay ahead of my finances. Well, Monarch Money has me covered because they understand that finances can not just be messy, but can be confusing. And it's so quick for you to fall behind on your finances, whether it's when you fell behind on your holiday shopping or you got ahead of it. You said, here's my New Year's resolution. And now that you're into the late portions of March and early spring, maybe you're starting to slip a little bit. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO as they give you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. And it's more than just your average budgeting app. So yes, the budgeting is there, but Monarch Money is a complete financial command center for all of your accounts, your investments, your goals. So don't just manage your money, start building wealth with 50% off your first year to all of our PHLY listeners. So here's some of the things that you can do with Monarch Money. All of your accounts, your credit cards, and investments will be in one place so you know exactly where your money stands without the hassle. It's also a finance tool that you're going to enjoy using. The interface is easy to use, and it's not just some blocky app that you have to go searching for things. There's some personality to it as well. Monarch Money was named the Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, and it is the top personal finance app by users and experts with over 30,000 5-star reviews. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use code PHLY at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code PHLY. And when you save a couple of bucks, maybe you want to take that savings and enjoy a night out, whether it's with your significant other, some of your friends, a loved one. Maybe you want to hang out with your parents. Because reminder, hang out with your parents, please. I'm sure that they would love for that. You can do it with our friends over at Ballparks and the Parks Casino. It is my hometown casino of choice. By the time that I am done this ad, if I were home, I could be at Parks. So when I tell you that Ballparks and Parks Casino is my hometown casino of choice, I'm not kidding. I'm not using that as a moniker. I have grown up in Ben Salem. I've lived in Ben Salem my whole life, and Parks Casino is located right off the street road exit of both the Turnpike and I-95, and this is where you want to go. It's how you win, and it's the best place to get all of the excitement, including some of the greatest acts at the Excite Center at Parks Casino, and it's one of the many things I love about my hometown casino of choice. Tomorrow, a little alt-rock emo phase for all of you millennial emos out there as the All-American Rejects are coming to town at the Excite Center. And what I love about the Excite Center, there's not a bad seat in the house. It feels intimate. It's a smaller space, but the venue is gorgeous. And it feels like a big atmosphere, right? Because they do it up well. The lights are great. The sound quality is excellent. And again, there's not a bad seat in the house. And you're not going to feel like you're sitting up in the nosebleeds because you're going to feel like it's a personalized venue just for you. And if you're looking for a night out, not just a concert or a comedy event, if you're looking for a night out, you can get some of the amazing options at Parks Casino when it comes to a night out for dinner. Bamboo Noodle House, I can't recommend it enough. Some of the best food, not just at Parks Casino, but in Ben Salem. Looking to hang out with your friends? As the weather gets a little bit warmer, head on over to the Liberty Bell Beer Garden. They've got an indoor-outdoor kind of mix with the glass windows that come up. You can watch all of the games on the big screen and enjoy a huge selection of beers, domestic, local, imported, craft, you name it. the Liberty Bell Beer Garden has it. So head on over to Parks Casino for all of your incredible night out. Parks Casino, this is how you win. ParksCasino.com to buy tickets for all of their shows. You must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast here on the PHLY Network, brought to you, of course, by our friends over at Bet365. We're going to talk to Andrew Golden in about 10 minutes. But before we do that, I want to get to the second phase of yesterday's game, which there was some bad in yesterday's game, as you take with any game, and especially with early in the season. Oftentimes, pitching is ahead of hitting. And yesterday, you saw it in full force as the Phils struck out 19 times as a team, including 13 times to MacKenzie Gore, who also gave up just the one hit to Kyle Schwarber. He also did not give up a ball in the air. The ball that Schwarber hit was a low liner. It was kind of on the ground to back up the middle. And other than that, MacKenzie Gore did not give up any kind of hard contact. And what I saw from Gore yesterday was a guy who understood his assignment, right? First and foremost, again, the shadows certainly came into play, and I think it came into play for both offenses. And I also, again, believe that pitching is ahead of hitting this early in the season. But what Gore did well was attack the zone. He then kind of was able to use that as an offset and hit the corners and take the Phillies up in the zone a good bit later in the count to put away the lineup. He threw first pitch strike on 78% of the at-bats that he saw yesterday. League average is somewhere about 60 or 61%. He was well above league average yesterday. So what he did was attack the zone, get ahead 0-1, and then use his better than average stuff. In fact, I think he's got really good stuff to get to get ahead and stay ahead against the Phillies hitters. He was excellent yesterday. It was, again, another tip of the cap moment to a guy who I am really bullish on heading into this 2025 season. I think MacKenzie Gore is poised for an excellent year. You saw it towards the back half of last year where the strikeout numbers really started to pile up. He's a guy who averages a strikeout per inning basically throughout his career, but you saw it. He went from like 5 and 6 strikeouts a game to 8 and 9 strikeouts a game. I believe he had an 11 strikeout game against the Phillies last year. He had 13 against the Phillies yesterday. And the pitch that I thought was his best was his slider. He threw 23 sliders yesterday exclusively to left-handed hitters, and he got whiffs on 80% of the swings that he generated. He got 6 strikeouts on the slider on the 23 that he threw. And he also didn't get barreled once over the 6 innings that he pitched. And all of that kind of led to a lot of really uncompetitive at-bats, especially early in the game. Again, you could say what you want about the shadows. It played a factor, but quite frankly, I'm not going to use it as an excuse because it's problematic for both sides. And so, yes, both pitchers have an advantage. And when you're going up against Zack Wheeler, that becomes a huge issue. And MacKenzie Gore's got excellent stuff, and that becomes an issue in and of itself. And the funny thing is, MacKenzie Gore actually last year had reverse splits. He was better against righties than he was against lefties, but he was excellent against the lefties in the Phillies lineup yesterday. One guy in specific, one lefty in specific, and this continues our conversation about the bad, I thought had some of the poorer at-bats yesterday, was Brandon Marsh. I also thought JT Realmuto, prior to the extra base hit in extra innings, didn't have good at-bats either. He struck out 4 times. But Brandon Marsh, I thought yesterday, probably put together the worst at-bats of the Phillies. And I don't mean to single the guy out when the team struck out 19 times, but he struck out 4 times yesterday, and he only saw 12 pitches. When you strike out 4 times, that's 12 pitches right there. So you're telling me in 4 at-bats, he only saw 6 additional pitches. He just really didn't feel like he had competitive at-bats. 50% of his swings on fastballs were whiffs. 100% of his swings on breaking balls were whiffs. Now, we know he really struggled against lefties last year. It's why he didn't play a whole lot against lefties. It's why Johan Rojas got so much extended time against left-handed pitching later in the season. And he struggled against lefties again today, because all 4 of the pitchers he faced were left-handed. 2 against Gore, 2 strikeouts against Gore, 1 against Ferrer, and 1 against Pache. And so teams are just going to run out left-handed pitching, especially if it's towards the end of the game and they have the opportunity to have multiple lefties in the bullpen. They're just going to run out a lefty against Brandon Marsh late in the game. And that's going to kind of be the way that they attack Brandon Marsh. And I don't blame them. I mean, I thought his at-bats against lefties yesterday were not great. Now, listen, I'm not going to overreact to one game. You know, it's it's opening day. There's a lot of strikeouts around baseball. The Phillies probably struck out more than most teams, but there was a lot of strikeouts around baseball yesterday. I believe baseball collectively hit 223 yesterday, so it was a pretty middle-of-the-road day offensively for baseball. Jackson Chourio, who I think a lot of people are really high on from Milwaukee, struck out 5 times in 5 at-bats. So it wasn't even like Brandon Marsh and JT Realmuto had the most strikeouts for a single hitter in any particular game. But I just think that, I've been I don't want to say anti-Brandon Marsh because that's not fair, but I've kind of gotten to a point over the last 2 years or so where I've seen enough Brandon Marsh, and the at-bats against lefties really are not competitive at times. And so, listen, there's 161 games left, and Rob Thomson said he's going to give Brandon Marsh every opportunity to be an everyday Major League player, but I just don't love the idea of Brandon Marsh against lefties full-time down the stretch. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be stunned as they progress if this becomes more of a split, especially against left-handed pitching. The last guy that I thought was not ideal, and I think a lot of people have brought it up in the chat, of course, was Jordan Romano. And by the way, are we going to do Romano? Are we going to do Romano? We'll do Romano because that's what Rob Thomson said, and it's when I Googled it the other day, apparently the Canadian pronunciation is Romano, whereas the American pronunciation is Romano. So we'll do Romano. He threw 29 pitches in yesterday's game, 1 inning, blown save, 2 earned runs, allowed 3 base runners, and quite frankly, the command just wasn't there. And you could see it from kind of the jump where it was a 4-pitch walk to the leadoff hitter, 2 pitches, hits a batter, and only 42% of his sliders were strikes yesterday. Only 5 of the fastballs that he threw were strikes as well. An elephant in the room. You're right. The answer to the question in center field I don't think exists yet because elephant in the room says it's not like Rojas can hit lefties either. Rojas actually was better against righties than he was against lefties last year, and he wasn't particularly good against either of them, but he was better against righties. So there's no immediate answer. And I know Justin Crawford is probably the thought process for a lot of people, but I don't expect that to be the case until, I don't think he makes his debut. Barring an injury, I don't think he makes his debut for the Phillies until probably closer towards, the later portions of the summer. They're going to give him some quality at bats in AAA to see how he handles it because he jumped from high A to AA last year and hit well in both times, in both leagues. So they're going to see how he handles AAA. I think that he is going to make his Major League debut this year, but I don't think it's going to be until a little bit later. Yeah, 69 OPS plus is just garbage. I mean, it's brutal. And it's both of them, right? That's for Rojas, but I would bet you that Marsh is probably not much higher if it's higher at all against lefties specifically. But let's get back to Romano for just a second. Again, the command just wasn't there. 42% of his sliders were strikes, and he tried to bury it early, which didn't make a ton of sense to me, but he tried to bury the slider a little bit early, and he wasn't getting a ton of chase. Only 18% of his swings on sliders did he generate chase, 20% of his swings on fastballs. And the first 2 hitters that he faced, he fell behind 0-2 on both, 1-0 on both of them, and he walked the first guy on 4 pitches, he hits the second batter, and both of those runs end up scoring. Now, the next 3 hitters, he got ahead 0-1 on both. There was an RBI ground out, so he generated an out, but gave up the run because of the fact that, the command wasn't very good. Outside of the command, one of the things that really, really frustrated me with Jordan Romano yesterday, and again, one game, I'm not going to go crazy in this, but one of the things that Romano did yesterday, he didn't hold runners on at all. And relievers who can't hold runners on really, really frustrate me. I brought it up with Craig Kimbrell for the year that he was here. It used to drive me nuts that Kimbrell just refused to look at runners. I didn't think Romano made any kind of checks. He didn't take a look for a second at the runner on first. It was an easy stolen bag. The runner stole second and third, put 2 runners in scoring position. That's what frustrated me more than the command issue, was the fact that he really did not take a look at either runner whatsoever and kind of allowed a double steal for free. So that was probably the thing that frustrated me more than the command. I think the command will bounce back, but relievers who refuse to take a look at runners and give a second look, change up their cadence, are just asking to be run on. Because a lot of times right-handed relievers specifically have higher leg kicks. Kimbrel did it. Romano has it. And they don't really do a good job of holding runners on. And guys get ridiculously good jumps. And you saw it on that double steal yesterday. All right, we're going to talk to Andrew Golden from the Washington Post in just a second. But before we do that, let's pause one more time and tell you about some more of our friends here at PHLY. Yeah, and you've heard me mention Bet365 a couple of times already because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users who are treated to 780,000 live stream events each and every year, and Bet365 is the pioneer of in-game betting. So you get a live stream, plus you get the opportunity to live game bet as the odds change consistently throughout the day. Before the game started yesterday, took MacKenzie Gore over 5.5 strikeouts just because it felt like it was a trend that was going to go in that direction. But later on in the game, I probably could have gotten him at 8.5 or maybe 10.5 and still cashed out on that because he ended up with 13 strikeouts. But the best thing about Bet365, outside of the in-game betting, is the early payout structure, especially with the NHL and the NBA as the season winds down. If your NHL team that you bet is up by 3 goals at any point, immediate winner. Same thing in the NBA. If your team goes up by 20 points or more, you don't have to worry about a late run, a fourth quarter run to not cover the spread. If your team goes up by 20, you're going to early cash out and get a payout as well. Again, as we get closer and closer and closer to the end of March, I urge you, if you're going to get in on Bet365, please do so. This offer is only good until the end of March 31st. New customers will get a $150 bonus bet when you bet $5, win or lose. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit $10 and place a bet for just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let me tell you about our friends over at Game Time. If you're looking to get in on some last-minute deals, now we don't know if the home opener is going to be Monday as scheduled or Tuesday, but you can get your tickets with Game Time, and it's the best market value that you can possibly get with our friends over at Game Time. They're not going to hit you with any last-minute fees. They have an upfront pricing scale that allows you to see exactly what you're going to pay when you go to buy the tickets. But it's not just about knowing what you're going to pay. You're going to know exactly where you sit, and where your location is important when it comes to Game Time, especially when you're buying tickets at another ballpark. Now, may know exactly where you're sitting at CBP, but what happens if you go down to Nationals Park this weekend? What happens if you go to Wrigley or Fenway where there's just poles sitting in the middle of a section? You don't want an obstructed view, and the seat view map, and not just the seat view map, but a 3D view of what your seat's going to look like, is the best app feature possible on the Game Time app. They give you super convenient deals, and they make it easy for you to know exactly how and where and when you're going to buy your ticket for not just for a sporting event. You can do it for comedy events, concerts. I've used the Game Time app to buy tickets to Queen with my mom last fall, I think it was. We went to go see Queen, and we used the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchases. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. And I am really excited to be joined by our first guest of the regular season. He covers the Washington Nationals for the Washington Post, and that is Andrew Golden. Andrew, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking some time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm your first guest, so that's a lot of pressure.
You know what? So what we're doing this season is every Friday we're going to be joined by a guest who covers or does content for the opposition of the Phillies to get a little feel for how that team is faring. Some of the how the fan base is feeling about that team. And I know this weekend's a little bit different because opening day was yesterday. But I wanted to get an opportunity to chat with you because there was a lot that happened in yesterday's game. And so I wanted to start with MacKenzie Gore. Just excellent yesterday. 13 strikeouts, 37 strikeouts in his last 5 starts against the Phillies. And I've been on the record as saying I think this is kind of a breakout year for MacKenzie Gore. What have you seen from Gore, maybe over the last year, 18 months, whatever the case may be, that's kind of helped him settle into this role as, the Nationals kind of de facto ace, and maybe I removed de facto, maybe just an ace in general as he continues to grow. What have you seen from him over the last season and a half or so?
I think the key for MacKenzie Gore is limiting the bad starts. I think so I've covered him since he came over in 2022. He didn't pitch in 2022. 2023 was his first full season with the Nationals. And he was really good for the first half and has struggled a lot in the second half. Last year, he was really good up until July and then had 9 bad starts and then finished really strong. So I think this year, just the key is how do you limit the bad starts to 3 or 4 versus letting it spiral into 9 starts for a full season. But he's shown that he could do what he did last night, or yesterday afternoon. He's shown he can do that. And I think the key for him, as well as not being so fastball reliant, I think what you saw yesterday was him getting ahead with his slider, his sweeper, which he's throwing a little bit more, his curveball. So mixing those in and getting ahead with those pitches makes it a lot more impossible, makes it a lot less predictable. When he gets behind in counts, he can be a little bit more predictable, goes to his fastball, doesn't use his breaking stuff as much. I think the key for him is just getting ahead, especially with those breaking pitches and then being unpredictable. I think that's what makes him great because he has 4 legitimate pitches that can be effective.
All right, so let's talk about the shadows, because I know it's the topic of discourse for a lot of fans. I think probably Nationals fans as well, because Phillies fans haven't shut up about it in the last 24 hours or so. Where do you sit on the shadow conversation? Because 21 strikeouts between the two starters isn't nothing, but I'm a big proponent of it was a factor for both sides. Where do you sit on the shadows discourse for a 4:00 start?
Yeah, I think it's a factor for both sides. That's kind of my take on it. You saw it in terms of the at bats the Phillies had, but also the Nats on the other side. They weren't making a ton of good contact. They were striking out early, and later on they were putting the ball in play, but not like they were putting the ball in play that well. And so for me, I think it's just something that it's not like the shadows go away for the bottom or the top. I think it's just kind of you to deal with it. And I think you saw some better at bats, some more competitive at bats from the Phillies once they did go away, and same for the Nationals. And so I think it's just kind of the product of how the game is.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a balance between, oh my gosh, it's a catastrophe versus it means nothing, figure it out. You know what I mean? Balance somewhere in between.
For sure.
So I was down there yesterday. I haven't been to Nationals Park in quite some time. I was down there yesterday, and when they were introducing the lineups, when they were introducing the Nationals lineup, it felt to me like the biggest pop from the ballpark was for CJ Abrams. Has CJ Abrams kind of taken the mantle of face of the franchise for this team?
I think at the moment he is. I think when you look at the rebuild the Nationals have been in, they fans have kind of needed some guys to cling on to, and I think that CJ being an all-star really established him as the guy that fans can cling on to, and I think that Dylan Cruz and James Wood are also in that mix, right? And if those two guys perform at a high level, I could see them kind of sharing that mantle with CJ Abrams. I think, as you mentioned, MacKenzie Gore is another guy that can do that. But I think those are kind of the 4 main guys that the Nationals are kind of putting their hopes in that they'll produce this season. But I think those are the guys the fans gravitate to. I think CJ Abrams is the most proven out of the 4 because he was an all-star last year, and he wasn't as effective in the second half. So the question is, can he put it all together for a full season? But I think that's the key for him. I think that's why Nationals fans kind of gave him that big round of applause. I think that's really who they gravitate to right now.
So the offense is there. There's no question the guy can swing the bat. Obviously, the defense is coming along as he progresses. What's the Nationals fans when they think about patience for the defensive side of things? Because in Philly, we're sitting here with Trey Turner, who has steadily kind of declined as a defender. What's the patience level for a young shortstop in CJ Abrams, when it comes to the defensive side of things?
Yeah, I think there needs to be an improvement this year. I think is the bottom line. I think his first full season with the Nationals, he was below average, but it wasn't super below average. But last year he was statistically, if you look at Statcast and outs above average, I think he was the lowest in the league when it came to outs above average, or I guess below average. And so I think that there has to be some growth there. I think there is patience in the sense of you want to give him time to see what he can do effectively, but at the same time, he has to perform better. And the Nationals, given how they performed the past couple of seasons, they need to be at their best, especially defensively, and that starts at shortstop. And so there is some patience, but I think they do need to get it together. I think he needs to take a step forward this season.
So you brought up a couple of guys, and we're speaking to Andrew Golden, who covers the Nats for the Washington Post. You mentioned a couple of guys, Abrams and Cruz and MacKenzie Gore. I'm a huge James Wood fan. I think that the kid is going to just be a special power hitter, especially if he can kind of rein in the chase rates a little bit. What's the feel for this team as they kind of start to put together that collection of young talent? Like, does this feel like maybe this is the turning point season and kind of coming out of the rebuild a little bit and starting to put together, maybe even if it's not a results-based season, but they feel to me like they might be a little bit more of a scrappy, difficult out in 2025. Do you get that sense as well that this maybe is the turning point to this rebuilding coming out of it?
Yeah, I get the sense that they have higher expectations than they have in the previous few seasons. I mean, even yesterday, Dave Martinez said, like, I don't want to put a win total or anything on this team, but I do believe that we should be competing for the playoffs. And so, like, I think that did set the standard of, like, okay, this is where they think they can get to this year. I think that all comes down to how some of those young guys perform, but I do believe that they believe that they're kind of towards the back stages of the rebuild. And if this year goes well, like, they can kind of be past that rebuild and really invest. But I think it all comes down to how do some of the young guys perform. And so, they made some signings this offseason. They spent the most money they've spent since 2020 on free agents. So I think that's proof that they do believe that there is potential. But I think if you want to see them take another step forward in spending, they have to have another really good year this year. I think that starts with the young guys.
So the rotation, I think, is structured and anchored by MacKenzie Gore and a couple of other young arms who I think are have some promise. The one question mark to me as an outsider looking in on the team, and you maybe saw it a little bit yesterday, is the bullpen. Is there a structure to how this bullpen's going to function? Because I know Kyle Finnegan's been the closer and kind of that dude for what feels like a billion years at this point. But is there kind of a structure to how this bullpen is going to function? Is it what we saw yesterday, or what's kind of the structure of the bullpen for this season?
I think when you look at the structure of the bullpen, the back end, you're going to see Jose Ferrer, who I know struggled yesterday, but I think he has closer stuff, and Kyle Finnegan. I think you'll see those two be in the eighth and ninth inning, depending on matchups and how things kind of shake out. Derek Law, in theory, would have been their seventh inning guy, but he's on the injured list right now. And so right now, I think they're trying to figure out who's going to be that bridge guy to Ferrer and Finnegan. I think that's the kind of the big question right now. And you saw Lucas Sims was the first guy who had that opportunity yesterday. He gives up the homer to Bryce. Then Ferrer comes in and gives up the homer to Schwarber. And so I think there's a lot of questions there. Jorge Lopez is a former closer who's also in that mix too, I think, in the back end of their bullpen. But with Derek Law out to begin the season, I think there are some questions of who's going to kind of bridge that gap and be the reliable guy in the back end to transition to Ferrer. But yeah, I think it should be kind of interesting. But yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest question mark. They're really young. Even the guys in the back end had their question marks too. And so you saw that play out yesterday, but don't want to make any quick judgments off one game, but definitely was kind of seeing some question marks kind of play out there.
So speaking of the bullpen, I love good baseball stories. I love good human stories. The Brad Lord story is awesome. Spent the offseason working at Home Depot, makes the Nationals roster. Can you kind of give us an insight on how this has unfolded, if you will, in terms of, like, how do you go from working at Home Depot to being a major league pitcher in the span of 4 or 5 months?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So he was a 19th round pick, I want to say in 2022, 2023. And last year he jumped from high A to triple A. And so honestly, if he hadn't gotten hurt at the end of last year, he might have made his debut last year. But my coworker Spencer wrote the story about it. But yeah, he basically worked at Home Depot this offseason. And that was kind of how he got himself in baseball shape, which is really cool. And then he came into camp this year, and he is a starter, which is funny enough. Like, he is a starter, and he came to camp as a starter, and then he performed well. And they kind of thought, like, we kind of might need him as a long man out of the bullpen. They've really struggled to have a long man they can rely on. And he kept performing well in spring, and he made the team. And so it's a really cool story. Really, a success for the Nationals from a development perspective to take a 19th round pick and turn him into a big leaguer. How much success he has, obviously, wait to see how that all plays out. But definitely a good story for him, for the Nats. But yeah, it's a cool story all around, and good to see him make the majors.
So last one for you here, and I greatly appreciate your time. This is a division that seems to, on the outset, be three really, really talented postseason teams at the top. When it comes to the Braves, the Phillies, and the Mets, what's your outlook on this division? And in terms of potential division winner, is there a team for you that has an inside track on being that division winner?
I think it's between the Braves and the Phillies. I think those are the two for me, at least, to stand out. I think the Mets, obviously, their offense is really good, but I think there are a lot of question marks in their starting rotation as guys get healthy and those sort of things. I think it's a matter of how. I think I give the inside track to the Braves, given who's coming back, but it depends on how they look when they come back. Like, Acuna, when he came back from his torn ACL a couple of years ago, like he wasn't really fully himself. And so, like how will he look when he comes back, and how will Strider look? Is he on the innings limit? Those sort of things. And so, I think that I give the Phillies the edge in the starting rotation, but I think the Braves have a lot of have a lot of pieces too. I don't know. It should be interesting to see how it plays out. I think I like the Braves lineup a little bit better once it's all together, but I think the Phillies have the edge in the rotation. So I think it'll come down to those two. It seems like kind of a toss up to me, but I maybe give the Braves an inside track given their history. But in the playoffs, it's obviously the Phillies have had the edge in the playoffs. So regular season versus postseason, what really matters.
Yeah, I saw the Braves. The Braves lost almost 1,600 games played from their starters due to injury last year. To win 89 games when you lose that many, and I think a combination of that plus 2023, as you brought up, was like a historically good Braves offense. So even if they're really, really good the following year, there's a regression of sorts. So like those two things paired together, the fact that they won 89 games, had the Cy Young winner, I think it's a really good Atlanta team when they get healthy.
I think that's the thing for me too. I think all those things went wrong last year, and somehow they still find a way to make the playoffs. It just feels like to me once they get it all back together, they'll be in a good spot. But obviously the Phillies are really talented too, so it should be interesting to see how it all plays out.
So you can follow Andrew on Twitter at Andrew C. Golden. Andrew, I can't thank you enough for taking some time and chatting with us on a Friday. And I hope that as the season unfolds, obviously the Phillies and Nats will play 3 more series throughout the year. Would love the chance to get to chat with you again as the season unfolds.
Definitely looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Andrew, thank you so much. That's Andrew Golden of the Washington Post. Again, you can follow him at Andrew C. Golden on Twitter. Excellent conversation. And that's exactly the types of conversations I'd like to have each and every Friday, because I can tell you how I feel about a specific team, and you can tell me how you feel about a specific team. But I love speaking to the people that are there every day, that are at the ballpark every day. They get a better understanding of the team than what we do here is in Philadelphia. So I can't thank Andrew enough for that. That was an excellent conversation, if I do say so myself. All right, we got about 10 or so minutes left here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. And one thing that I wanted to talk about yesterday, because Major League Baseball seemingly can't get out of its own way. And before I do that, actually, I wanted to say hello to everybody in the chat. I have not had a chance to do that just yet, other than a few comments. So I wanted to say hello to Pat Ryan, John Lemmerman, Steve Garrison, Elephant in the Room. Appreciate you all for hanging out with us. Molly and Barkley's Life earlier on the pod in the live chat. Trevor Rice, thank you so much. And again, you can catch us on YouTube at any time. But if you missed the live show, you can also go back and watch or listen to it on any of your podcast and streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple, whatever the case may be. You can find us there. If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask you this now before I forget. If you wouldn't mind dropping a like on the video on today's live pod. And then, of course, if you do listen on the audio-only platforms, leave a review, positive or negative. I think everybody always says, hey, rate us 5 stars. And I appreciate that if you do. But I generate feedback from bad reviews too. There was one a couple of weeks ago, in fact, that was not particularly positive. And, I think that initially I went, oh man, that really sucks. But I learned from it because somebody brought up a really excellent point about the way that I handle the podcast. And I think that I have learned from it and I've grown from it. And I think it's made me a better host. I hope it has, at least. And I think constructive criticism is great. So if you don't love the pod, I apologize and tell me why, because I'd love to, kind of better tailor this to you, the Phillies fan. But one thing that I noticed across Major League Baseball as it continues to not be able to get out of its own way for a multitude of reasons. I always thought that baseball was one of the worst at marketing its stars. I always thought the baseball was one of the worst at marketing itself. But one thing that I noticed yesterday was the fact that the games all got played at the same freaking time. What are we doing, baseball? What are we doing here? You have basically the entire day, right? There were NBA games yesterday. There were NHL games yesterday. There was college basketball later in the day. I understand there was college basketball later in the day. But when did basketball start? Andrew, do you know when the first game was yesterday? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this. Do you know when the first NCAA game tipped off yesterday?
NCAA game?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, that had to be.
Later
it was
in the day,
Alabama
right?
BYU. I think they started at like 7:04 or something close to that.
So there was what
6:37.
There was 4 games yesterday, right?
Yeah, it was Alabama BYU. Duke played,
and I don't know if it's the same, but the first tip off tonight is 7:09.
Yeah, it's just about the same. Yeah.
So the reason that I ask you that is because most NHL, NBA games started about 7 o'clock their local time. NCAA started 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And yet, here we are with no games beginning before 3 o'clock on opening day. And that was only 2 of them. 9 games starting at 4, none in the 5 or 6 o'clock slot, just 1 at 7, none at 8, none at 9, and 2 at 10 o'clock at night.
Pretty dumb.
Please, someone explain to me why Major League Baseball didn't stagger its games yesterday. Please. Please explain it to me. Why did the first game not start at, I don't know, Andrew, is 12 o'clock too early? Is 12:05 too early to start on a Thursday?
So I think their reasoning is because they're looking out for the half-dayers, the people from work.
Sure.
And the TV timing. So there's probably not going to be enough people who are going to be able to get off or take the day off to go to a 12 o'clock game. But they should.
Well, I think so many, like, I was with a ton of people yesterday with Philly sports trips that clearly obviously took the day off. Or
yeah, come on. We're all going to play hooky from time to time.
Right? There was, I don't know, 70 of us, 80 of us. It's not just 70 of us, right? It's hundreds of people take opening day off. And maybe it's because they weren't home. Philly specifically. Maybe that's why, because they weren't home, that maybe there's going to be a much more streamline of people taking the day off on a home opener. But across baseball, like, to me, okay, maybe 12:05 is too early, but if you start, there was 9, 10, 12, 14 games played yesterday. 14 teams played yesterday. Or, 28 teams played yesterday. If you'd have started a game at 1:05, 2 games at 2:05, 2 games at 3:05, 4 games at 4 o'clock, and then you had the 7 and 10 o'clock game, you would have had a more staggered start, and people would have been invested into baseball throughout the day. You would have had a semi-monopoly, at least on the early portions of the day. And I understand there's a reason there was only 1 game at 7. It's because of the NCAA tournament, and they didn't want to lose out on that. And then you had your 2 West Coast games that started at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is 7 o'clock on the West Coast. Baseball missed out on a huge opportunity yesterday to command the day. The NFL doesn't miss that opportunity. The NBA doesn't miss that opportunity. College basketball hasn't missed that opportunity. Even the NHL on, the Friday? It's the Friday after Thanksgiving, right, Andrew? That's the big NHL day, is the Friday after Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Is it? It's either the Friday after Thanksgiving, whatever day it is. I think
the
it is
day
Black
of Holy Ice or whatever, when they play like 23 games.
I think it's Black Friday, right? They play like all day.
Yeah, something like that.
The NHL does it on Black Friday. Why did you not commandeer opening day? It's a Thursday. There's not a lot going on. People are looking for excuses to watch these games. And Andrew, you brought up the half-day crowd, or maybe the crowd that didn't take off.
Yeah.
How many people are watching the games on their phones or their laptops or their computer screens at work?
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, that's what they're doing. I had a buddy yesterday who, he and I worked at the same company in the year that I was in between when I was at the Fanatic and when I was here. And he sent me a Snapchat of him watching the game at his desk from work. You know why? Because everybody does it. Everybody's watching opening day in some capacity. Whether you've got one of these, you're on a TV. I'm pointing to a TV because I can't hold up the TV from here. Like, you're watching opening day.
Yeah.
It just feels like it was a missed marketing opportunity for Major League Baseball yesterday.
No, I totally agree. I think the other thing that they may be fearful of is the attendance at the actual park itself. Mm-hmm. And if you do it at a time where people can't make it, you don't want an opening day to like, hey, we're looking around the stadium and it's like half full. So like maybe that's another reason why. But there isn't a solid reason why they shouldn't just stagger 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. It's a first day of baseball. Just play all day. And
I will say this, at the ballpark yesterday, it filled out as, the game progressed. And I think there was a reason behind this. I'll explain it in a second. I took a picture from center field yesterday, 5 minutes before first pitch. It was 4 o'clock, almost on the dot. And in fact, I'll tell you when I posted it to give you an exact example. I posted it at, it was 21 hours ago.
Oh, wow.
Which was, it was 4 o'clock on the dot. I posted it. Nationals Park was empty. Not empty, but it was half full. And it filled in. And I think the problem was, Andrew, I spent like 15 minutes, 20 minutes standing on a street.
Really?
And so the gates in center field, it's like the gates are in center field. There's a small sidewalk. There's a street that they block off, but it's a functioning street. And then all the bar scene. It's a really cool bar setup. There's a bunch of bars. There's some outdoor decks.
Okay.
I bet you it's awesome in like May and June.
Oh, I'm sure.
A sunny, Thursday evening game. Get there a little early for happy hour. I'm sure it's a beautiful time. And it was great. I mean, it was a decent day out. But the congestion of people brought us basically to like a grinding halt. And I basically literally sat in the street in between the stadium and the bar scene and didn't move for like 15 minutes because they didn't have enough gates.
Oh, that's
for the amount of people. And people were walking around because it is basically situated right on a street corner. It's kind of got that old school baseball park feel where it's like, hey, here's the ballpark, here's 2 streets. You know what I mean? Whereas like CBP is a little bit more secluded because it's in the South Philly sports complex.
Yeah, of course.
But congestion was crazy. I literally stood there for a while. And yes, player one, maybe it is a little bit of a DC sports culture, a little bit. But I think the Nats fans, being a Nats fan is probably a strange feeling, especially for the older generation. Like, so Andrew, you and I are about the same age. So
Yep.
We were in our, I don't know, I think I was 10 the first national season.
Yeah.
And probably right about the same.
Probably been like 12.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Nats have kind of been ingrained in our growing up for a while now. They're in their 20th season, which is crazy to say.
Yeah.
But like we were kids when the Nats were invented. But I think about our parents' generation, in particular the generation above them, that in between the last Senators team and the Nationals coming to Washington, there was a huge gap of no baseball in DC, which I think should never happen. Like your nation's capital should have a baseball team.
That makes sense.
But I think a lot of people in the DC area, especially in a certain age group, are Orioles fans by default. So I don't know how long or if it took to be a Nats fan if you were an entrenched Orioles fan of that age bracket. Kids our age, it's easy to say, oh, wait, we have a team now. I'm going to root for the Nats. Like, if Philly didn't have a team and the Phillies sprung up when you and I were 10 or 12, it's pretty easy to go, oh, hey, look, a baseball team. This is great.
Yeah.
But if you're entrenched especially considering how close Baltimore and Washington are, if you're entrenched as an Orioles fan, I got to imagine it's probably kind of difficult to say, oh, I'm going to be a Nats fan now.
Yeah, it's really weird down there. I lived down there for like about a year and a half, 2 years.
Sure.
And it's very strange. That they call it the Beltway. It is. It's like Baltimore and then go down to DC and all that stuff. Yeah, it's strange, and I don't know how you would do.
The Beltway parking lot, right?
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't know how you would do your fandom down there, but I would feel like if you're an Orioles fan, I wouldn't have ever switched.
Do you think that there are a lot of Orioles? So obviously, Baltimore has a team in baseball and Washington and Baltimore both have baseball teams. Washington and Baltimore both have football teams.
Football teams, yep.
Do you think that there are a lot of Commanders Orioles fans?
I never came across any.
Really?
It was always, if you were a Commanders fan, you were a Nats fan. If you were a Ravens fan, you were an Orioles fan.
Sure, which makes sense, obviously, because DC and DC.
Yeah, when all birds.
I wonder if there is we were talking about that maybe like quote unquote older generation that didn't have the Nats, and so they're O's fans, and then they were Commanders fans, longtime Commanders fans. All right, before we go any further, I do have one more thing I want to talk about, speaking of the complex. But before we do that, I want to say thank you to everybody that's watched on our streaming platforms. Head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show, as it is time to head on into overtime. All right, just a couple more minutes. This isn't going to be a long overtime session today, but speaking of Nationals Park, and I didn't want to do this directly after the Nationals guest because I feel like it would be a little bit rude, but I've seen it mentioned in the chat a couple of times. That's the second time I've been to Nationals Park, and it probably had been almost a decade since I'd been there. Andrew, have you been to Nationals Park?
No, I've never.
It's a ballpark. Like, I'm not going to sit here and inherently tell you it's terrible, but I kind of walked around. So I did a lap. The inning that Orion Kerkering pitched, so I believe it was the bottom of the 7th, I did a lap around the ballpark. Maybe we're spoiled because CBP is such a nice stadium. It's a ballpark, man. That's the nicest thing I can say about it. Like,
yeah.
I did not particularly love it. Our seats were great, but like I did not particularly love the layout of the ballpark. It was weird. Like it's structured weird where like the second level is weirdly inaccessible at times. And the weirdest thing to me is when I took the lap, you know how every place has like their Diamond Club? They have like their suites in their Diamond Club. They have the PNC Diamond Club there. And the Phillies Diamond Club feels like it's not intrusive. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's there and you know there's going to be a little bit of a block off, but you can still peer in to the field from almost everywhere in the ballpark. There was a good, I would say probably 40 or 50 feet up the first base line to 40 or 50 feet up the third base line where those Diamond Club levels sat, where it was just a wall. Like I just kept and you know, there were the entryways and stuff like that, but it was mostly just a wall. And I'm like, dude, I can't see anything. Like, I'm looking at a wall. Okay, there's the Diamond Club, and there's a wall. Okay, there's a bath, and there's a wall. And it was like basically the wrap of the concourse where you couldn't peer in at all. And maybe I'm spoiled because of CBP, but I've seen it in the comments a couple of times. It's not a bad ballpark, but it's not a good ballpark.
Yeah, I've never been there, and it sounds like I never will.
Listen, I am somebody who wants to do the 30 for 30 thing. Like, that's just a bucket list thing for me as a huge baseball fan. I had to get there at some point, but the outside area of it, while it's congested, I think is really, really cool. The bar scene, as I said, is really, really cool. But the stadium kind of left a little bit to be desired for me. There's like one random restaurant right in the middle of center field with like open glass windows, which is cool because you can sit and eat and watch the game. But I don't know. It left a little bit to be desired to me, especially considering if you go, 50 miles up the road to Baltimore.
Oh, that stadium.
Camden's like, I know it's almost 30 years old, but it is like still a crown jewel of baseball.
Yeah.
Like it's still to me one of the best ballparks in all of baseball. I think Nationals Park left a lot to be desired. And Steve brings up, we want to bring up Steve's chat there. Visit PNC and Anaheim. PNC is a bucket list stadium for me. My two are PNC and Petco.
You never been there?
I've never been to PNC.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
No, I haven't been there.
It's so nice. I went a handful of times. My dad worked out there, and we went to a couple Pirates games, and it's really, really nice. Right on the river there.
Right on the river,
Yep.
and the view of the city skyline. It is a gorgeous stadium that I'd love to get to. So real quickly, having gone to Penn State, there was, I don't know if they're still there or not, but there was a short season single A affiliate team in State College. They were called the State College Spikes. So they were the Pirates affiliate for a while. They were the Cardinals affiliate for a while. And their stadium is set up as a mini PNC. So it has the elevated right field wall and the bleachers like they have for Roberto Clemente and PNC.
Yep. Which
is such a cool ode to him. But it's basically a mini PNC with this similar setup. And it was kind of cool because I'm like, this is, 10% of PNC. And I've never been, and I'd love to go. And I know it's, like a 5.5, 6 hour drive.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
Yeah.
I have to get there on the weekend. And honestly, my goal always was to go see the Phillies play there, but I got to get there at some point.
Oh, you should.
Are there any bucket list stadiums for you as we wrap this show up today?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really ventured too far into the stadium. I would say, I would love to go to Fenway. I'd love to go to Yankee Stadium. I'd love to go out to Chicago, see Wrigley. Yeah, I haven't really seen many stadiums in my lifetime so far, so I would definitely like to try those ones out.
So I've been to obviously both Citizens Bank Park and the Vet, Camden Yards, which to me is my favorite ballpark I've been to, Nationals Park, which is pretty low on the list, and then I hate to say this now because of the fact that the obviously destruction that happened to it, but Tropicana is the other ballpark that I was at, and it's a glorified gym.
I was by there. I was never inside of it.
Yeah, we went to a game one day. I was a kid. We went, and it was bad 20 years ago. And I got to imagine. Well, again, I'm not gonna talk ill on. There was a catastrophe that happened, right? It was a massive hurricane, so I'm not gonna talk ill on that.
Of course.
But just from a ballpark viewing experience, I did not enjoy my time at Tropicana. But that'll wrap up today's show. I know we went a little bit long, but I appreciate everybody for hanging out with us in the chat. If you wouldn't mind, before we get out of here, just drop the like on this video and leave your comments for your ballpark. What is your bucket list ballparks? Are you more of the old school Fenway, Wrigley history? Do you like the new school like I do? What are your bucket list ballparks? We'll be back with you on Monday. We've got an extra show for you next week on Tuesday as well, but we will be back with you on Monday. Different time on Monday. We're going to start at 11 because we have a tailgate with our friends over at Cavs Catering and Philly Sports Strips that I got to get down to. So we're going to start our show at 11 a.m. on Monday. We'll go from 11 to 11:30. Enjoy your weekend. Phillies 2 more in Nationals Park. Jesus Luzardo gets the start tomorrow, and it'll be Aaron Nola on Sunday. They'll go up against Jake Irvin and Mitchell Parker as the Phils go for a series win tomorrow live from Nationals Park. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Phillies baseball. Enjoy the beautiful weather on Saturday. And we'll talk to you Monday right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.